Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk.
Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear. That is not what democracies do. That is what autocracies do.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From President Donald Trump's wrapping up his state visit in the United Kingdom to outrage over the preempting of Jimmy Kimmel's late night show over his comments about Charlie Kirk. But first this morning, we took a look at the joint press conference held by President Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Is a moment to celebrate the unique bond between our two countries. But today we've gone far beyond that. We've renewed the special relationship for a new era. The United Kingdom and the United States stand together today as first partners on defence, first partners in trade with the groundbreaking deal we struck in May, and now with the new agreement that we've just signed this afternoon. We're confirming our status as the first partners in science and technology, ready to define this century together, just as we did the last.
Prime Minister Starmer, Melania and I are tremendously thankful for the wonderful hospitality that you and Lady Starmer have extended today at Chequers. Quite the place, I must say, quite the place. And we're grateful beyond words for the spectacular honor of the state visit yesterday at Windsor Castle, hosted by His Majesty King Charles III and Her Majesty Queen Camilla. These are two fantastic people. We will never forget it. As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history. That is thanks in large part to the traditions of British liberty, which grew up on these isles, these beautiful, magnificent isles, and were carried by our ancestors to the New World. We're forever joined, and we are forever friends, and we will always be friends. This enduring connection is why I was thrilled that the United Kingdom was the very first country with which we made a historic trade deal, and a very good trade deal. He's a tough negotiator. I think it was a better deal for you than us, but these are minor details.
It's a very good deal for both of us.
He's a great negotiator. We will extend our unparalleled security alliance into the realm of economic security for the first time, and I look forward to finalizing it very soon. We'll have it done very quickly.
Mr. President, the UK is expected to recognise a Palestinian state in the coming days as the killing in Gaza continues. It often seems that you're the only person that Israel will listen to. What more can you say to them to tell them to stop? And why is the UK's position on a Palestinian state, in your view, wrong? And Prime Minister, what will the recognition of a Palestinian state actually achieve? Is it not just gesture politics to appease people in your own party? Thank you both.
Well, Chris, let me just start with that, because we discussed this amongst other things. We had the best part of an hour, I think, upstairs earlier today, just one-to-one, going through a number of affairs, world affairs, in private. And we absolutely agree on the need for peace and a roadmap, because the situation in Gaza is intolerable. The hostages have been held for a very, very long time. And they must be freed. And we need aid to get into Gaza at speed. And so it's within that context of a plan for peace, which we're working hard on, which not only did we discuss this morning, but our two teams have been working together on, that the question of recognition needs to be seen. And so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have, and a viable Palestinian state. Thank you.
Well, simply, I want the hostages released now, right now, not 1, 2, we'll give you 3 more tomorrow, and, like it's been, but we're the ones that got all the hostages released. We got many, many came to the Oval Office, and I've heard stories like I've never thought even possible. There was no humanity, no anything. I said to them, was there any warmth shown during this stay? Like they offered you a little extra meal, they gave you a little smile, and they said, don't worry, you'll be okay. And every one of them said, not even a little bit. Amazing, to think that during this stay, long stay in some cases. We had a man the other day, 451 days he was there. I always ask that question. And was there any warmth shown? Just a little word of, encouragement. And the answer is every time, absolutely not. I'm shocked to hear it, because in the worst cases, there's always somebody that comes through. We have to remember October 7th, one of the worst, most violent days in the history of the world, not just there, the history of the world. And I got to see the tapes, and I wish I didn't see them, actually, but I got to see them. And I want an end. I want the hostages released, and I think it's going to be okay. But it has been a brutal period of time. But this has been going on for a long time. This is not something that's over the last year, 2 years. But this has been for decades and decades. But we want it to end. We have to have the hostages back immediately. That's what the people of Israel want. They want them back. And we want the fighting to stop. And it's going to stop. But a lot of bad things. Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
Prime Minister Starmer, if you feel so strongly about officially recognizing Palestine for statehood, why are you waiting for President Trump to leave the country? Why can't you just do it right now? And isn't there a risk in rewarding Hamas with that?
Well, let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organization who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine. And what happened on October the 7th was the worst attack since the Holocaust. We have extended family in Israel. I understand firsthand the psychological impact that had across Israel. So I know exactly where I stand in relation to Hamas. Hamas, of course, don't want a two-state solution. They don't want peace.
Separate issue, free speech. Your Vice President, Vance, said that free speech is under attack in the UK. Do you agree with him? And Prime Minister, we saw the dismissal of a very well-known chat show host in America last night, Mr. Kimmel. Is free speech more under attack in Britain or America?
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, on the question of Charlie Kirk, can I just express how shocking that is, I think, to everybody who believes in free speech and in democracy. It sent shockwaves through the world. And I know that he was a friend of the president, and I reached out straight away to the president because I understood how impactful it would be on him and his family. And we all need to be absolutely clear about that. Whatever our political views, it is shocking and is to be condemned.
President Trump there with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressing the media after their 2 days together, the president's 2-day state visit to the UK. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is in the UK. She's been there since the beginning of the trip. And Haley, you and I have both been listening to that press conference. What stood out to you from what we just heard from both President Trump and Prime Minister Starmer?
Yeah, Holly, while both Prime Minister Starmer and President Trump underscored the strength of the U.S.-UK bond as they've touted new trade and technology partnerships at the same time as they are pressed on world matters like the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, you saw little points of differences, and Trump acknowledged disagreements. Prime Minister Starmer noting that the two of them did discuss this one-on-one in private. President Trump saying that they are working hard on Israel and will get it done between Russia and Ukraine. When we talk about Russia's war in Ukraine, the Prime Minister saying they in particular discussed how to increase pressure on Putin. And that is significant, as the president also said that he is willing to do more, but once again reiterated his call for European allies to choke off Russia's supply of oil. And this is significant, as this is something we have heard European allies repeatedly underscore to President Trump, the need to continue support for Ukraine's defense. And we have seen Trump in recent months take a more critical tone towards Putin. And once more today, he said the Russian leader has really let him down. But notably, Trump also told the Prime Minister, as he has said before, arguing that the war doesn't affect the UK so much, as he said, as Starmer pressed on the need to ramp up pressure. That was significant. Another conflict, Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza, where there has been a point of difference, one that President Trump outright acknowledged during the press conference. The United Kingdom has indicated it will recognize a Palestinian statehood, and that is where there has been a difference with the United States. President Trump was pressed by a number of reporters on when he would exert more pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on this front. And Trump, in response, continued to underscore the atrocities of October 7th and his call for Hamas to release all hostages, while Prime Minister Keir Starmer stood by the UK's intent for that Palestinian statehood recognition. He is one of a few European countries who in recent months have announced their intent to do so.
Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull reporting in London for us. We know you're going to head back here with the president when he returns to the U.S. Safe travels home. Coming up on Today As It Happened. With electronic payments becoming more and more popular, people are using less cash these days to pay for goods and services. So when you need cash, you might be in for a surprise. I'll explain coming up. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories.
Clashes breaking out between police and protesters in Paris today. Demonstrators were rallying against the French President Emmanuel Macron's government. Strikes hobbled the Paris metro and disrupted other services all across France. Police fired tear gas at protesters who are angry about proposed cuts to public services.
A federal court has denied the Trump administration's motion to dismiss a lawsuit challenging parts of the president's election integrity executive order. 19 state attorneys general sued over provisions requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration and restricting when states can count mail-in ballots. The states argue the order exceeds federal authority over elections. The Trump administration had sought to dismiss the case for lack of standing and failure to state a claim. The number of Americans applying for jobless aid last week fell significantly after surging to a nearly four-year high the week before. Filings for unemployment benefits for the week ending September 13th fell by 33,000 to 231,000 total. The previous week, applications surged to 264,000, their highest level since October 2021. Concerns about the health of the American labor market led the Federal Reserve to cut its key interest rate by a quarter point on Wednesday. The rate cut signals the central bank's focus has shifted from inflation to jobs. When's the last time you went to an ATM to withdraw cash? If it's been a minute, then you might need to be prepared for sticker shock. It used to be taking cash out from an ATM was not that big of a deal. But now almost every withdrawal comes with a reminder. Money doesn't grow on trees, as Stephen Cates with Bankrate tells us.
Now for the third year in a row, we're at an all-time high. ATM fees are getting very close to nearly $5.
ATMs have been around since the late 1960s, but it was in the early 1990s when they became mainstream, and withdrawal fees have been steadily growing ever since. In fact, in 1998, the average cost to withdraw cash was less than $2 a transaction. By 2008, the fees were $3.43, and today they are $4.86 on average.
It can bite when you're trying to get $50, $100 out and you're giving away, 10 or 5 to 10% of that.
Bankrate surveyed 25 metropolitan areas and found that Atlanta has the highest fee per transaction at $5.37, followed by Phoenix, San Diego, Detroit, and Cleveland. The cities with the lowest ATM fees on their list: Philadelphia, Seattle, and Boston.
The ATM infrastructure exists, and if you have fewer people using it, you potentially need higher fees spread over those fewer transactions to support it.
Banks usually do not charge their customers to use their own ATMs, but when you go out of network or use non-bank affiliated machines like in gas stations, banks tack on those fees.
Credit unions, online banks, even some brokers like Charles Schwab or Fidelity, those are readily reimbursing ATM fees and are actually one of the best options to go and look for a way to not have to pay ATM fees.
However, there was a bit of good news. Bankrate also looked at fees related to overdraft charges and found those went down a slight bit. And fees for insufficient funds in your checking account are at their lowest point ever. People often use ATMs while traveling overseas, so you may want to also check with your credit card company to see if using their services would save you those fees as well. Up next on Today's It Happened.
No president, Democrat, Republican, has the right to turn the federal government into an instrument of political revenge. That is what they're doing. That's what autocrats do.
In the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder, with the rhetoric that followed, many have been targeted and even fired for comments in the aftermath, including ABC's most recent decision to cancel Jimmy Kimmel's show. Democrats on Capitol Hill are holding a news briefing about free speech, so let's listen in.
Using the tragic death of Charlie Kirk as an excuse to supercharge a political witch hunt against critics is abhorrent, obnoxious, and as un-American as it gets. What happened to Charlie Kirk is of course abhorrent, and even more chilling is that we know all too well it wasn't an isolated incident. But it's repulsive that the Trump administration is perversely using this awful death as a predicate to supercharge their long-standing campaign against political opponents. How low can they go? Every day you wonder, and they go even lower. And this is, unfortunately, a very, very glaring example of just that. It's not a new campaign. They've been engaged in an ever-escalating campaign to use the mighty power of the federal government to attack civil society. Whether it's Jimmy Kimmel, civil society organizations, or the Trump administration's perceived political enemies, its crusade is unending. And this is one of the saddest parts of all, because of congressional Republicans' obeisance to Trump, it's unchecked, because they are scared to stand up to Trump. Where are they? Where are our Republican colleagues in denouncing this stuff? We don't hear from them. But Democrats will not stand by. We will fight these abuses in the courts, in the court of public opinion, in Congress. So that's why I'm proud to stand with all of my colleagues here today to announce the No Political Enemies Act, legislation to stop the government from being used as a political weapon. The principle is simple. No president, Democrat, Republican, has the right to turn the federal government into an instrument of political revenge. That is what they're doing. That's what autocrats do. It's the kind of thing that Xi would do, that Putin would do. And Trump is doing it. It's disgraceful. So, It's not hard to understand. No pact says the government must not engage in political motivated targeting and retaliation. The threats of political investigations and retaliation from the administration against their perceived political enemies strike at the beating heart of what this country is all about and has been since the days the farmers on Bunker Hill put down their plows and took up muskets for things like freedom of speech. So, Democrats won't stand for it. We'll fight back.
Some of us have sworn an oath to defend our Constitution. It is under assault right now. I am telling you, if we at the people, not just folks who agree on some partisan spectrum, but all Americans stand up in defense of the right to speak your truth as you see it, if we do that, if we respond to these assaults on the First Amendment by locking arms, we won't just defend democracy. We will do what my grandparents and parents' generations did, said, and sang. We shall overcome this dark time.
Up next on Today's It Happened.
Scripps News has been investigating corporations that own jails now housing immigrant detainees.
We were just hoping to film a little bit of the complex, if there's any way we could do that.
No, I've been directed to tell you to leave. This is private property.
What we're learning ahead.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court for an emergency order to remove Lisa Cook from the Fed Board of Governors. The White House turned to the High Court after an appeals court refused to sign off on Cook's firing. Trump accused Cook of mortgage fraud, but she denies wrongdoing and has not been charged with any crime. A federal judge ruled her termination was illegal and reinstated her. No president has ever fired a sitting Fed governor in the agency's 112-year history. A federal judge blocking the Trump administration from immediately deporting Guatemalan migrant children who came to this country alone. U.S. District Court Judge Timothy Kelly issuing a preliminary injunction Thursday that extends protection for these children indefinitely. The decision comes after the administration attempted to remove Guatemalan children from government shelters and foster homes over the Labor Day weekend. The government can still appeal. There are also temporary restraining orders in place in Arizona and Illinois. 2 Pennsylvania state police officers are recovering from injuries they received in a shooting that killed 3 others. This happening yesterday in rural York County, Pennsylvania. Police killed the shooter, identified as 24-year-old Matthew James Ruth. Stephanie Liebergen has our details.
Responding to what officials called a domestic incident were shot and killed in York, Pennsylvania Wednesday. 2 other officers were also shot, according to the state police. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro held a news conference with state and local officials.
We grieve for the loss of life, for 3 precious souls who served this county, served this Commonwealth, and served this country. This kind of violence isn't okay. We need to do better as a society.
The deadly incident took place in a rural part of the Commonwealth, close to the border with Maryland. Police say the gunman was also killed. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said on social media the FBI and ATF are on the scene assisting local law enforcement. A nearby school was briefly put on lockdown, but police say there is no longer any threat to the community. Stephanie Liebergen, Scripps News Group.
Now to a story you will only see on Scripps News. Pleas for help at one of the largest privately run immigration detention centers. One detainee was found dead. Documents unearthed by the Scripps News investigative team and interviews with detainees reveal urgent complaints about a Pennsylvania jail run by a for-profit corporation. Scripps News has been investigating the growing use of private jails to lock up immigrants, this despite a lack of record of problems. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra is live in our D.C. newsroom with all the details, and he joins me now, excuse me, Patrick. You went to Pennsylvania. You saw this firsthand.
Absolutely, and this is a jail that is really in the middle of the woods in Pennsylvania. It is a place that is one of the largest ICE detention centers in the nation, where a suicide occurred, and it is run by a for-profit company. When we began digging in, we found that there were complaints about problems at this jail before the death.
An emergency call for an ambulance to rush to a private jail housing immigrants deep in the woods of Pennsylvania.
555 Jew Drive, the Michigan Valley Processing Center. ALS emergency for cardiac arrest.
A Chinese immigrant has been found hanging in a shower room.
An individual that hung themselves. They do have CPR in progress.
It's too late. 32-year-old Chao Feng-ge, who'd been living in New York before ICE detained him 5 days earlier, has died by suicide. The Moshannon Valley Processing Center in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, where he died, is run by the Geo Group Corporation. Since 2021, beginning during the Biden administration, Moshannon's immigrant population has ballooned. It now houses over 1,300 migrants. Our previous Scripps News investigation exposed safety issues at privately run jails going back years.
This is not right!
But oversight of private jails has been difficult, even for members of Congress.
They, of course, did everything that they could to make sure that we couldn't get in.
We drove to the jail ourselves to try to at least see the complex from the outside. After all, U.S. tax dollars are paying the bills to keep the lights on.
We were just hoping to film a little bit of the complex, if there's any way we could do that.
No, I've been directed to tell you to leave. This is private property.
Okay, dope.
A guard with Geo Group stitched on his shirt turns us around.
Well, they've asked us to leave, and we will respect that. It is private property. But it's just too bad that we can't film a little bit of this beyond what we can see here, which is barbed wire, a lot of fencing, some buildings.
A tip leads us to another way to get to the stories of the people jailed inside, some for more than a year. We learn dozens of detainees have been filing petitions in the closest federal court, pleading with the judge to end their detention.
So I can see online that all of these are petitions filed by immigrants who want to see a judge. Probably most of them are at Moshannon right now. The issue is when I click on any of these petitions, it says, you do not have permission to view this document. But I've been told that if we come to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, to the federal courthouse here, we can actually read these documents in person. The catch is we can't bring a cell phone or a laptop, but we can bring a pad of paper and a pen. So we're going to go read these petitions and take some notes.
We head inside the Johnstown Federal Courthouse and into a closet-sized room with one computer and no printer. We transcribe by hand the immigrant petitions that reveal reports of inadequate health care at Moshannon and still other detainees placed on suicide watch in the months before Chao Feng-ge killed himself. One report says Moshannon discontinued the 15-minute wellness checks for a detainee who experienced several severe panic attacks, including one that led to his hospitalization after a suicide attempt. Then there's the case of a Nigerian immigrant, a survivor of domestic abuse and female genital mutilation. Her petition says Moshannon does not provide regular or adequate gynecological care, and that when she arrived at Moshannon, officers stripped her naked on camera, causing her to have a severe panic attack. She too was placed on suicide watch.
How are conditions at Moshannon?
Through her lawyer, we arranged to speak to her on the phone in a series of calls from the jail and agree not to reveal her name. She says after a year and a half, her desperation led to thoughts of harming herself.
To commit suicide, to kill myself because of all what is going on with the pain and all. When I think about my 2 kids, I keep myself be strong. I've never been locked up like this in my life. I'm just a single mother that came to work to find a daily bread for my 2 kids. That is who I am.
She was detained by ICE last year after getting arrested for an altercation with acquaintances. A judge ruled she can't be deported back to Nigeria because of the likelihood she'd be persecuted there. Her petition says she needs medication for blood pressure, chest pain, anxiety, depression. But medications have not been consistently provided to her while ICE has detained her.
Being here makes me feel more depressed. I'm far away from my 2 kids. can't reach my children. I can't see my children.
ICE denies her claims and says she has had numerous visits with medical staff and has refused recommended treatments on numerous occasions. We've spoken with several other detainees, including an immigrant from Jamaica who'd been in the States almost 30 years, who's been held at Moshannon for 9 months.
We are just going out of our mind and no answers. They don't give enough food. The vents are not being cleaned enough, so it's like it's making me sick right now. That's why my voice is so raspy. I'm feeling sick at this moment.
The GEO Group did not respond to our questions about specific claims from detainees at Moshannon, but told us in a statement, in all instances, our support services are monitored by ICE. We train all staff on GEO's suicide prevention and intervention program. The support services GEO provides include around-the-clock access to medical care, and additionally, all of GEO's ICE processing centers are independently accredited by the American Correctional Association and the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. Professor Sarah Pauletti at the University of Pennsylvania worked on a 2024 civil rights complaint that said access to medical care is woefully inadequate for all people ICE detains at Moshannon. It's a report that documented 2 other suicide attempts.
When you had heard that someone had died there, what were your thoughts?
An inevitable tragedy. So this is a problem across the board with immigration detention. The treatment for mental health is completely inadequate, if existent at all.
One of the biggest issues is just not being able to get on the inside. Even flying drones is prohibited anywhere near this facility, and it is so hard to get to in the middle of the woods of Pennsylvania. We put in requests with the GEO Group as well as ICE to visit this facility to see what's going on the inside. So far, Del, they have said no.
I was fascinated about learning that this is in Pennsylvania. It's not in Alabama, not in Mississippi. It is in Pennsylvania. You also find that revenue, this is a revenue driver. This is big bucks.
Absolutely. Unprecedented growth opportunities. That is what the head of the GEO Group says they are going to be expecting because of these contracts with ICE. And this might just be the beginning. In calls with various investors, both the GEO Group and CoreCivic are making very clear that they see a lot more growth ahead as the Trump administration seeks to double the amount of detention space for immigrants.
Our investigative correspondent Patrick Terpster live for us in Washington, D.C. Patrick, as always, thank you very much.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, the countdown to a possible government shutdown continues. And Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is at the Capitol as lawmakers work to keep the lights on. His reporting is right after the break. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
NVIDIA announcing a new partnership with semiconductor Intel this morning. The two companies will team up to work on custom data and personal computer products. NVIDIA also said it's investing about $5 billion in Intel. Trump administration recently announced the government has a 10% ownership stake in that company. We are less than 2 weeks away from a government shutdown. To that extent, Democrats are now trying to push their own spending plan to try and keep that from happening. But as they say, the clock is ticking. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live on Capitol Hill. And Nate, will this stopgap measure work?
Well, Del, it's been a lot of hurry up and wait here on Capitol Hill as lawmakers are talking about this possible funding patch. Republicans have their own plan to try and keep the government open and funded, but one that does not involve all of the funding changes that Democrats are looking to accomplish. Now, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer releasing his own funding plan last night, saying that he wants the Trump administration to restore funding to a number of key areas and also extend some Affordable Care Act subsidies, which are set to expire at the end of September, which could make health care coverage more expensive for millions of Americans. So I want to start here with what Democrats have proposed on top of what Republicans are proposing. They want a short-term government funding bill that expands those ACA subsidies forever. It reverses the One Big Beautiful Bill's changes to Medicaid, cuts for Medicaid. It also unfreezes some aid funding for foreign aid that was frozen by the White House, restores funding to NPR and PBS, and boosts security for senators and members of Congress, something that has long been a discussion point up here. But I want to talk a little bit about those Affordable Care Act subsidies right now. According to recent reports from the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan wing of Congress that determines how much bills will cost and what their real world effect will be, they say that those Affordable Care Act subsidies expiring would cause 4.2 million people to lose their health care coverage over the next decade. That's if they expire. If they are extended in perpetuity, though, 3.8 million people would gain health coverage over the next decade. That being said, not exactly clear that Republicans are willing to go to the negotiating table with Democrats, rather hoping to jam them on a government funding deal that would be largely one determined by Republicans with little Democrats' input. To be clear, Democratic leaders have not had the chance to sit down with Republican leaders. At this point, they're calling on Republicans to facilitate that meeting between Democrats and Republicans. But a lot of questions, even from some sitting U.S. senators, about the possibility that a shutdown could happen and that the blame game for that shutdown, that's already beginning. Take a listen. Should Senate Majority Leader Thune sit down with Senator Schumer to negotiate?
I'm sure they ought to have conversations, but this is exactly what Chuck Schumer's advocated for a very long time, which is a clean CR that gets us to November. If Schumer wants to shut down the government, that's going to be on him. It'll be another Schumer shutdown. So he's got a decision to make, but he's not holding many cards, and this is always what he's advocated for. I mean, he's the guy that's decried government shutdowns forever. So I think it's just political grandstanding that I don't think is going to be very effective.
And look, Del, the blame game is already beginning, even though we are weeks away from that possible government shutdown. A lot of questions about whether a deal will be reached, about whether Democrats will really withhold their support for this Republican funding plan in exchange for a meeting or some sort of bipartisan agreement. A lot of questions about whether Republicans would be willing to give Democrats that kind of policy win. To be clear, though, Del, there will need to be some Democrats supporting Republicans' plan for it to pass the House of Representatives and the Senate. The math just does not work in Republicans' favor otherwise. A lot of questions about whether Democrats cave or whether they hold out for some sort of bipartisan negotiation. A lot of questions as we are just a couple weeks away from a possible shutdown. And look, the politics of it already starting to overwhelm Capitol Hill. That blame game you just heard, calling this a Schumer shutdown, similar things are being said on the other side of the aisle, Del.
Our congressional correspondent, Nathaniel Reed, for us live on Capitol Hill. Nate, as always, thank you very much. A disturbing story right now playing out in Mississippi. Police investigating the death of a black student found hanging from a tree on a Mississippi college campus. It's all happening at Delta State University just as fall classes there are getting underway. Scripps News National investigative reporter Lori Jane Gliha has been combing through the preliminary coroner's report. Lori Jane, what did you find?
Del, this has shaken up the campus and gained the attention of well-known civil rights attorney Ben Crump. The initial report from officials indicated no evidence of foul play, but family and students want answers as they wait for an autopsy to be completed.
Questions are swirling at a Mississippi college campus after staff found a black student at Delta State University deceased and hanging from a tree. The staff member discovered the 21-year-old Trey Reed near the pickleball courts around 7 o'clock Monday morning. The university police chief and Delta State University's president said a preliminary coroner's report indicated no evidence of foul play, but the investigation continues.
While the preliminary report of the Bolivar County Coroner's Office indicates no evidence of foul play, we recognize that this is not only about facts. It's about emotions and it's about feelings. And the way this loss and how it was discovered affects people's lives.
Wednesday, the university's police chief said he was one of the first people on scene and that his department is working with outside agencies, revealing there is some visual evidence related to the incident, but he wouldn't say what it captured.
There are videos and they're in the hands of the investigative team.
The student's family, meanwhile, retained renowned civil rights attorney Ben Crump, according to a statement he posted online, demanding the family receive access to any evidence. Trey's family deserves answers they can trust, he wrote. We cannot accept rushed conclusions when the stakes are this high.
And we just ask that you continue just to lift us up in your prayers. We thank you. And God bless each and every one of you.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, outrage after ABC indefinitely removed Jimmy Kimmel from the airwaves following comments he made in the fallout of Charlie Kirk's assassination last week. Did the FCC chairman's threat of action against the network impact their decision? Stay with us for Scripps News correspondent Stephanie Liebergen's rundown of what critics are calling an assault on free speech after the break.
It should be the bulwarks of free expression, not kowtowing to the chairman of the FCC just because of his personal whims doing the president's bidding.
Jimmy Kimmel and his late-night talk show are out off the air indefinitely. Fired, actually not fired, but put off the show after a broadcast. Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen reports.
ABC's decision to drop Jimmy Kimmel's show, at least for now, came after two companies that operate local ABC affiliates said they wouldn't air it, and after the Federal Communications Commission chair threatened to take action against the network. Critics call it the latest example of the Trump administration targeting speech it doesn't like.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
The controversial comments came during Jimmy Kimmel's Monday night monologue. By Wednesday, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr was threatening to take action.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Within hours, two local media companies, Nexstar and Sinclair, announced they would not air Kimmel's show on their ABC-affiliated stations. Statements from the companies called his comments offensive, inappropriate, and insensitive. Facing the loss of distribution and the criticism, ABC followed suit, preempting Kimmel's show on all ABC stations indefinitely, including those owned by Scripps News Group's parent company. President Trump applauded the decision on social media, saying ABC had the courage to do what had to be done. He has long complained about late-night TV hosts.
Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going.
President Trump has targeted media companies not just with words, but with lawsuits, including defamation claims against the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Earlier lawsuits against ABC News and CBS News resulted in multi-million-dollar settlements. The administration has also restricted White House access for news outlets viewed as hostile, like the Associated Press, which uses the name Gulf of Mexico instead of Gulf of America. Top Democrats in Congress and organizations like the ACLU say the president is trying to stifle free speech. The president and his allies say they're fighting back against corrupt and dishonest coverage. Stephanie Liebergen, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. We hope you have a great Thursday night.